I sat on the sofa, wielding an ear scoop to cleanse my ears, while my 16-year-old daughter lounged at the opposite end, engrossed in her drama. In a moment of excitement, she playfully nudged me with her foot, commanding, "Go, prepare a fruit platter for me." Her imperious demeanor momentarily took me aback. When I remained still, she kicked my hand, the very hand that gripped the ear scoop. A piercing pain surged through my ear, and blood began to trickle from the ear canal. In response to my muffled cries of discomfort, my daughter remained indifferent, still chuckling as she continued to indulge in her show. Rising from my seat, I retrieved a cotton swab and, after meticulously cleaning the blood from my ear with iodine, a startling realization dawned upon me. I seemed to perceive the innermost thoughts of others. 1. Accompanying my daughter to the mall for a shopping excursion, we chanced upon a KFC outlet, and on a whim, she expressed a desire for fried chicken. In a moment of impulsive generosity, she tossed me the half-eaten cake, instructing me to dispose of it. Gazing at the extravagant price of over 100 yuan for such a minuscule portion, I felt a pang of regret over the wastefulness. I urged her to take a few more bites. With palpable impatience, she retorted, "If you think it's such a pity, why not eat it yourself?" Having endured a life of hardship from a young age, I find it particularly intolerable to witness food being squandered. Even as my parents prospered and our circumstances improved, our family steadfastly upheld the virtues of thrift and frugality. As I consumed the remnants of my daughter's cake, I ventured into the KFC to seek her out. In my haste to eat, I choked, the cake lodged in my throat, and upon seeing the cola she brought, I instinctively took a sip. Once I regained my composure, I noticed her frowning and rolling her eyes at me. Her voice echoed in my ears, "How disgusting. That ingrained, impoverished mentality is something you'll never shake off. I want to accompany you again." I stared at her in astonishment, perplexed by her words. With annoyance, she complained, "If you wanted a drink, why didn't you just buy it yourself? Is someone else's cola tastier?" With that, she discarded the cola into the trash, demanding I procure another cup for her. My daughter fell silent, yet the disdainful murmurs filled my ears again. What a lack of upbringing. "I can't stand it. Why doesn't Dad just divorce her? Why should I call such an uncouth woman Mom? It's infuriating." Were these truly my daughter's thoughts? How could I hear them? It seemed that since yesterday, when I had inadvertently injured my ear with a cotton swab, a muffled sound had lingered in my ears. I had assumed it was tinnitus and scheduled an appointment with a specialist for the following day. However, since this morning, that indistinct sound had grown increasingly lucid, and now I could comprehend its content with clarity. Observing my daughter frowning as she munched on fries, I reflected on her recent demeanor, and an overwhelming sense of disappointment and hurt surged within me, rendering me momentarily incapable of processing it. I told her I wished to go home. "You may continue to browse at your leisure." In response to my sudden coldness, she paused, yet dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "Fine. Just go home and mop my room's floor and change the duvet cover. I stained it last night." I did not allow her to finish her sentence before turning away. 2. Upon exiting the mall, I strained to listen to the sounds surrounding me. Others fell silent the moment they closed their mouths. Yet, moments ago, my daughter had also ceased speaking, and yet I still heard her voice. Was it an auditory hallucination? Fearing a potential issue with my hearing, I hurriedly hailed a cab to the hospital, securing an appointment with a general practitioner. After explaining my predicament, the doctor examined my ears with a reflex mirror multiple times, assuring me there were no issues and suggested I consult a psychiatrist. Doubting the doctor's expertise, I decided to wait for the specialist's opinion tomorrow before determining whether to pursue psychiatric care. Returning home, I felt utterly drained, collapsing onto the sofa for a brief slumber, awakening as dusk approached. At that moment, my husband and daughter entered, engaged in lively conversation. My husband wandered into the dining room, noticing the empty table, then moved to the kitchen, where he opened the rice cooker to find only a few remnants of rice inside. He inquired about my whereabouts that afternoon and why no dinner had been prepared. I explained my visit to the hospital and that I had taken a nap upon returning. After hearing this, my husband instructed our daughter not to change her clothes, stating, "Mom, didn't he cook? Let us eat out." He didn't even bother to ask what had brought me to the hospital, only concerned with dinner plans. This realization deepened my sense of discontent. Just then, my daughter emerged from her room, irate, demanding to know why I hadn't tidied her space. Lamenting the stained duvet would prevent her from sleeping. A surge of unbridled anger erupted from within me as I coldly replied, "If you can't sleep, then don't. There's plenty of space on the sofa. I am not your maid. What gives you the right to order me around?" Perhaps I had indeed spoiled her. She retorted, "Dad works hard outside every day while you sit at home enjoying life. Can you manage a bit of housework? Housekeepers are far more diligent than you. Look at you, it's already late, and there's no food prepared. And you still expect Dad to take us out?" My fury reached a boiling point as I shouted, "Yao Yuchi, I am your mother. I've raised you to this point not to have you criticize how I should conduct myself. If you don't want to be in this house, then get out. This is my home, and you are not welcome here." My sudden outburst shocked both father and daughter. For a moment, my daughter was rendered speechless. Yet the familiar voice echoed in my mind again. What is wrong with this woman? Has she lost her mind? Raising me? It's laughable. All she does is provide meals, and she acts as if that's a grand achievement. Telling me to leave? Huh. This is my father's home. Why should I go? I'll endure her for a while longer, and then I'll make her leave. Shortly thereafter, I heard my husband's voice. What's with this crazy woman today? Why is she so irate? Oh, right, she mentioned going to the hospital this afternoon. Could it be she found out she has a serious illness? If she really does, that would be ideal. Then I wouldn't have to endure her incessant nagging every day. I glanced at my husband, who stood by the dining table, looking awkwardly at me with his lips tightly sealed. My daughter stood at the doorway, her brow furrowed, also silent. Despite their lack of speech, why could I hear their thoughts? Why was it that I could hear them, yet not others? As I pondered this, my husband attempted to smooth things over, saying, "She's still young and doesn't understand. She didn't mean what she said. She loves you very much." He urged our daughter to apologize to me. Reluctantly, she approached and muttered an apology, yet as I listened to her words, I could hear the curses hidden beneath them. I felt utterly heartbroken. My daughter, whom I had nurtured for 16 years, treated me like a servant. Perhaps in her eyes, I was even inferior to a maid. After all, housekeepers receive a salary and are not obligated to fulfill every whim. 3. I instructed the father and daughter to handle their own dinner, then stepped outside. I called my best friend, who mentioned she was still working late. Sensing my discontent, she asked what was wrong. I inquired about her departure time, and she invited me to wait for her downstairs at her office, promising to wrap up shortly. Suddenly, I felt a twinge of envy for my friend, Lu Yao. We were all university classmates, my husband included. After graduating, I married and became a full-time housewife, while she succeeded in securing a place for further studies and obtained a scholarship for studying abroad in her sophomore year. As I was giving birth, she was boarding a flight to the beautiful country for her studies. 5 years later, she returned and began her own business, transforming a 4-person company into one with 100 employees. Though she remains unmarried, suitors line up from the west of the city to the east. She seems unimpressed by any of them, asserting that marriage isn't a necessity in life. A career is a woman's best companion. I envied her carefree spirit and regretted my earlier naivety in prioritizing romance over my education. Back then, I too had received a research placement. Yet I chose love over further studies. Yao Jun had expressed his disdain for women who pursued extensive education, claiming that too much knowledge rendered a person rigid. An undergraduate degree was the extent of what he could tolerate. If I were to continue my graduate studies, he would break up with me. I was reluctant to part ways with him, so ultimately, I relinquished my opportunity for recommendation. Subsequently, that spot was awarded to Lu Yao. When the taxi came to a halt beneath Lu Yao's office building, she emerged, resplendent in her professional attire. Upon seeing me alight from the cab, she warmly enveloped me in a hug. "Darling, what's wrong?" I was brimming with grievances, eager to confide in her. She led me to a nearby cafe, and after placing our order, she fixed her gaze upon me, urging me to speak. Just as I was about to reveal that I could hear the thoughts of my husband and daughter, an incongruous voice intruded upon my mind. I'm so exhausted. If I had known, I would have made an excuse to send her away earlier. Yao Jun mentioned that she had gone to the hospital that afternoon, and upon her return in the evening, she had become frantic. How was I to inquire about this matter? If she truly fell gravely ill, how could I offer her solace? I felt an emotional block, as if tears were not within my reach. I could only resort to pinching myself to endure the pain. I glanced around, noticing the absence of other patrons. Lu Yao sat across from me, her face adorned with a smile, her lips tightly sealed, never parting. It was undoubtedly her voice I had just heard. Trembling, I asked her if she had spoken moments ago. She looked at me quizzically, asserting that she had said nothing and was merely waiting for me to speak. Why was I able to hear my dear friend Lu Yao's words? Had she mentioned Yao Jun? Did he call her? I swallowed my urge to confide in Lu Yao, feigning nonchalance, claiming that I was simply tired and envied her successful career, expressing a desire to join the workforce myself. Lu Yao feigned delight, encouraging me to step outside the confines of home and re-enter society, asserting that a woman should not revolve solely around her husband and children, but must cultivate her own life. Yet, I heard her derisive inner voice, a homemaker, long detached from society, wishes to venture into the workforce? How laughable. Our company only hires individuals under 35. What could this foolish older woman possibly contribute? Wait until you emerge and you will realize you are utterly worthless. These two contrasting voices clamored within my head, overwhelming me with discomfort. I excused myself from Lu Yao and took a taxi back home. The following day, I sought the counsel of a specialist. The grizzled expert informed me that my ears were perfectly fine. After listening to my account, he similarly recommended that I consult a psychiatrist. I am now certain that my mind is sound. I seem to genuinely hear the inner voices of others. However, this phenomenon currently appears to be limited to my husband, daughter, and dear friend Lu Yao. There are no coincidences without reason. There must be a unique cause that enables me to perceive the thoughts of these three individuals simultaneously. As for the nature of this cause, I possess only a vague conjecture. There is but one truth, and I am determined to uncover it. On Saturday, I prepared a lavish breakfast for my husband and daughter. I then mentioned that I had been feeling under the weather during my period, had unleashed my frustrations upon them, and now regretted it, thus offering my apologies. My daughter seemed ready to speak, but my husband silenced her with a glance. He smiled and reassured me, "It's all right, we are a family. You should share your feelings with us when you're down. Both Kiki and I can offer you comfort." The apology felt somewhat unfamiliar. My daughter echoed his sentiments, saying, "Dad is right. Mom, you've worked hard. I apologize for my previous attitude and hope you can forgive me for my rudeness." Listening to their insincere words left me feeling desolate, yet I maintained a smile. I urged them to finish their breakfast, mentioning that I had made plans with Lu Yao to visit a resort in the countryside. My daughter chuckled and asked if I had received a notice about a relocation, as it seemed sudden that I was willing to treat them to a trip. I had almost forgotten about the relocation. The house in my parents' hometown was slated for demolition, and this time the area affected was broader than in previous instances. It was estimated that we would receive at least $100 million in compensation. Upon hearing this, my husband and daughter expressed their desire to travel abroad once the compensation was received, specifically to Antarctica to see penguins and icebergs. I had cautioned them not to get too excited, as there was no concrete notification yet and plans could change, leading to disappointment. A year had passed since then, and I had nearly forgotten about it. My daughter's mention of the relocation reminded me of the matter. I smiled and said it wasn't that. I had simply come to realize that life is short, and one must seize the moment for joy. After I spoke, my husband suddenly grasped my hand. Concern etched across his face as he inquired about my recent hospital visit. I mentioned that I had been experiencing gastrointestinal discomfort and that the doctor had prescribed digestive tablets. He seemed somewhat disappointed, insisting that if I felt unwell, I should promptly inform him. "Whatever the issue, with family by your side, we can face and resolve it together," he said. I responded with a smile of agreement. Lu Yao arrived at the resort ahead of us. The moment my daughter spotted her, she dashed over and embraced her, exclaiming how beautiful Aunt Lu was, how delightful her fragrance was, how lovely her skin appeared, and how impressive her figure and capabilities were. As I approached, I overheard my daughter's inner thoughts. If only Aunt Lu were my mother. Why must my mother be that disheveled and uncouth old woman, always nagging and engaging in self-righteous acts, imposing moral obligations on me and Dad? It's revolting. Meanwhile, Lu Yao's thoughts bombarded my mind like an explosion. My daughter is truly sweet-tongued. She is becoming more beautiful, inheriting the best traits from both her father and me. How wonderful. When she grows older, I can have Yao Jun send her abroad for her studies, and then our family of 3 can live happily together overseas. Yao Yuqi is her and Yao Jun's daughter? Impossible. This revelation stunned me, causing me to retreat repeatedly. My husband noticed my unusual behavior and hurried over, asking if I felt unwell and whether I wanted to return to the hospital for an examination. He seemed eager for me to have some dire ailment. Alas, he would be disappointed. I had undergone a comprehensive physical just last month, and all was well. Once I steadied myself, I half smiled and remarked, "It seems my daughter resembles Aunt Lu more than her own mother." Upon hearing my words, my husband's eyes flickered with surprise and alarm. And I discerned his inner thoughts. Could she know? This matter was only known to me and Yao Yao. How could she possibly know? Unless a paternity test is conducted, no one can discern that their child has been swapped. I admonished myself not to frighten myself unnecessarily. She was likely just speaking offhandedly. I laughed heartily and added, "Husband, you can't possibly take that seriously." He chuckled awkwardly, insisting, "No, how could I take that to heart?" Lu Yao and my daughter, hearing our laughter, approached hand in hand, inquiring about the source of our amusement. I reiterated my previous remark, and Lu Yao immediately cast a nervous glance at my husband. Yao Jun subtly shook his head, and Lu Yao's features relaxed. The one most delighted by this remark was undoubtedly my daughter, who excitedly asked, "Really? Really? Do I resemble Aunt Lu that much? I admire Aunt Lu so much. She's beautiful and capable. If I could be as formidable as her, I would dream of waking up with a smile." I smiled without responding, making my way into the resort. Behind me, my family followed, chatting and laughing. Yet I had lost interest in eavesdropping on their conversation. Upon returning from the resort, I collected hair samples from myself, my husband, my daughter, and Lu Yao to conduct DNA paternity tests. The results from the 3 tests arrived. Only my daughter and I lack a blood relationship. The other 2 results show a staggering 99 genetic similarity. I had long mentally prepared myself for this outcome. Confronted with the deceit and betrayal of those closest to me, I felt a surge of anger and sorrow within. I yearned to confront Yao Jun and demand to know the whereabouts of my biological daughter. I wanted to question his conscience. Wasn't he as much a mother to his daughter? Why the switch? If he had deceived me by saying the child was adopted, I would have believed him and raised her as my own. Why did he have to send one away? And then there's Lu Yao. I was completely unaware that she had been entangled with Yao Jun behind my back and had become pregnant around the same time. These 2 are truly terrifying. Suddenly, I recalled the graduate school quota that had been reserved for me. Could it have been a scheme they concocted together, with Yao Jun deliberately saying such things to make me give it up? The more I thought about it, the colder my back became. This vile couple was indeed malicious and dreadful. I sought the assistance of a reputable private investigator to help me locate my biological daughter and to conduct a thorough investigation into Lu Yao and Yao Jun. Details were paramount. After paying the deposit to the agency, my husband unexpectedly called, inquiring about a large purchase I had just made. How did he know I had just spent a fortune? His words filled me with dread. How could he have access to my transaction details? He hurriedly explained that the email address linked to my credit card statements was his, so he received notifications for every transaction. I slowly exhaled, recalling that when I applied for the card years ago, I had only remembered Yao Jun's email address and had carelessly filled it in. I hadn't changed it all these years. Fortunately, the credit card machine used by the private investigator bore no company name. I told him I had enrolled in an upscale yoga class. My husband chuckled and asked why I was suddenly so generous to myself. I replied that perhaps I had finally come to terms with things. Money is meant to be spent, and if I don't spend it, others will spend it for me. Yao Jun remarked with a hint of significance that I had been acting strangely lately. I smiled and explained that a few days prior, during a routine checkup at the hospital, I had witnessed several individuals with terminal illnesses on their knees, weeping in despair, which had awakened me to the realization that I should not be too hard on myself. However, my husband was more concerned about my medical report, which was all normal. The doctor even said that unless there was an accident, I could easily live to 100. He awkwardly remarked that it was wonderful before hanging up. Not long after, the notice for the demolition came through. I received a compensation of 100 million. I was waiting for Yao Jun to bring up divorce, yet he remained silent on the matter, becoming increasingly considerate towards me. My daughter kept urging me to fulfill my promise to take her to Antarctica to see the penguins and to Iceland to witness the northern lights. My husband disagreed, asserting that the locations were too far and required transfers, fearing my health would not withstand it, suggesting instead we go to Thailand. Naturally, my daughter opposed this, arguing that I had assured her there would be no issue and that he had no right to change the destination. The disparity between Iceland and Thailand was simply too vast. Yet my husband insisted on my health, adamantly pushing for Thailand. I scoffed, taken aback by his greed. He did not want to separate from me. He merely sought to dissolve my identity. After all, a divorce would only entitle him to half of my assets. But should I perish, he would inherit all. In addition to this substantial demolition compensation, I owned 6 shops, half inherited from my parents and half purchased with previous compensation funds. I had been fortunate. The shops I acquired at a low price thrived due to urban development. With a subway entrance constructed right in front and a large commercial district and theater nearby, they had transformed into lucrative properties. What puzzled me was, how had Lu Yao, who had seemingly done well in her career over the years, not earned a considerable amount? Yao Jun could have divorced me to reunite with their family, easily claiming half of my shops. Their combined income would suffice for their needs. It was only when the investigator relayed the information that I grasped the extent of Yao Jun's treachery and callousness. He and Lu Yao had known each other since high school, and their relationship was far from ordinary. Lu Yao hailed from a poor background. Her father tended a fruit orchard in the countryside, while her mother suffered from mental illness, confined to the orchard with him. Yao Jun had covered her university tuition and living expenses. None of this had ever been disclosed by either Yao Jun or Lu Yao. In fact, it was Lu Yao who had introduced me to him, claiming he was a senior in her club and that I would find him appealing, thus facilitating our acquaintance. I was indeed drawn to Yao Jun, falling for him at first sight and subsequently pursuing him fervently, even sacrificing my qualification for graduate studies for him. It seemed that everything had been orchestrated from the start. Lu Yao's company had also been established with Yao Jun's funding, utilizing my money. Behind my back, Yao Jun had mortgaged properties to secure loans. Although Lu Yao had made a considerable sum in previous years, her success had inflated her ego. With a singular focus on expansion, she had faced multiple investment failures, and her company was now heavily indebted, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. They owed several loans to the bank, which would naturally no longer issue them funds. Now, they had set their sights on my demolition compensation. Heaven has opened my eyes, revealing the truth. I shall see how I deal with this vile pair. My husband, uncharacteristically assertive, insisted that my daughter must comply, regardless of her reluctance. Upon arriving in Thailand, I noticed something peculiar in my daughter's gaze. Her dark eyes concealed a blend of turmoil, fear, and a hint of sympathy. I approached her. Leaning in to listen, my husband had apparently revealed the truth to her. She seemed momentarily unable to process it, caught between joy and anxiety. For my husband had instructed her to kill me. From the whispers of my husband and daughter, I pieced together the outline of their sinister plan. Plan A involved my daughter taking me swimming at night, and during turbulent waves, she would deflate my life preserver. Given that I could not swim and the waves were fierce, the likelihood of drowning was alarmingly high. Moreover, having my daughter lead me would divert suspicion from a premeditated incident. Plan B entailed my daughter taking me to a cliff under the guise of sightseeing, where she would coax me to the edge for photographs and then push me off, claiming it was an accident when I fell while posing for a picture. Since I would be with my daughter, the police would not suspect foul play. What a cunning and malicious murder plot! How could my daughter agree to such a nefarious scheme? Did my 16 years of heartfelt nurturing truly pale in comparison to her mere blood connection with Lu Yao? I pondered whether my failures as a parent were to blame or if she had simply turned cold-hearted and unfeeling. I contacted a domestic detective agency once more, seeking discreet arrangements for my protection. Plan A failed, as the weather in Phuket had been splendid for the past 3 days, with no rain in sight. The beach was bustling with people at night, and the hotel had deployed numerous staff to patrol the coastline. Should any issues arise, lifeguards would immediately respond upon hearing a whistle. My husband was visibly disappointed, while my daughter was anxious. The two of them spent the night plotting, preparing to implement Plan B. My husband had long selected the location and had even scouted it multiple times, thoroughly confirming that the cliff was deadly before permitting my daughter to act. The next day, my daughter suggested we visit a trendy cliffside cafe to capture the sunset. My husband feigned illness, claiming he had caught a cold from the sea breezes the day prior and would rest at the hotel, urging us to enjoy ourselves while reminding us to be cautious before we set off. My daughter led me up the mountain, and halfway through, I remarked that we seemed to have taken a wrong turn, as there was no sign of anyone on the path to the trendy cafe. My daughter, feigning innocence, admitted that it was her first visit too, and she was following the map, so she must have miscalculated. Since we had erred, we might as well embrace the mistake. The scenery here was quite splendid. I smiled in agreement, and my daughter visibly relaxed. We continued our ascent for another 10 minutes, and soon I spotted the familiar cliffside platform. A protruding slab of rock jutted out over the sea below. Should I fall, I would either meet my demise upon impact or be swallowed by the abyssal waters. The hearts of this father-daughter duo were as unforgiving as a venomous serpent. My daughter began to feign searching for the perfect angle to take a photo. I could sense her anxiety and inner turmoil reflected in her eyes, which bore the sting of determination. From her unspoken thoughts, I learned that her husband had promised her $500,000 upon her success, along with a plan for cosmetic enhancement. Ever since she was a child, she had harbored dreams of becoming a star, and upon hearing of Hongdian's potential to fulfill this aspiration, she insisted I take her there. During the summer and winter breaks, I had taken her several times to Hongdian, rented a place, and enrolled her in various training institutions that claimed to have connections to film crews, only to discover them to be fraudulent. After several disappointments, she eventually relinquished her dreams. However, the recent surge of internet celebrities seemed to reignite her hope, and she attempted a few live streams, but each time, her audience was scant. Occasionally, a few well-meaning online users suggested that her face lacked the beauty and distinctiveness necessary for success, recommending minor enhancements. Consequently, my daughter became obsessed with the idea of cosmetic surgery. She begged me for $200,000, but despite her pleas and tantrums, I remained resolute in my refusal. Now, her husband not only promised her the surgery, but was also willing to give her $5 million, enough for a complete makeover. It was no wonder she was so resolute. She asked me to step aside so she could take a photo of me first, to see the effect, and later, I could mimic her angle. I hesitated, expressing my concern for safety at the cliff's edge, and suggested she choose another spot. She grew impatient, internally cursing my incompetence and urging me to hurry up and die so I wouldn't waste her time. Yet, she maintained a smile, claiming she had seen many others take photos there without incident, reassuring me that caution would suffice. With a calm demeanor, I looked at her and asked if she truly wished for me to step closer. Was she not afraid that I might fall? She insisted that being careful was all that was required, promising that the photo would quickly be taken, and once uploaded online, it would surely garner many likes and attention. I relented and moved closer to the edge. My daughter watched me anxiously as I approached the precipice, then instructed me to turn around and face away from her. I complied with her every request. Suddenly, I heard her call out Mom. I could not discern whether it was a mere utterance or a heartfelt plea. I refrained from turning back, listening as she continued, Mom, this will be the last time I call you. After you die, I will have Dad choose a beautiful resting place for you, and I will visit you every Qiming festival to pay my respects. Please do not harbor resentment towards our family. Pushing you off the cliff could be seen as a way to reunite you with your parents, a rather splendid notion. Before her words could fully dissipate, a force propelled me from behind, and I was thrust over the cliff's edge. I was saved. The detective had arranged for a rescue team to deploy a safety net below, and 4 professional divers were stationed in the water. Should I break free from the net and plunge into the sea, there would be immediate assistance to retrieve me. The person who came to my aid inquired why. Knowing their plan, I hadn't reported them to the authorities and instead went through such elaborate means to play along. I managed a wry smile. Perhaps out of a desire to grant her an opportunity, or perhaps to offer myself a chance. I hoped my daughter would reconsider her actions, after all. For the past 16 years, I had raised her as my own. Even with her hostile demeanor, a flicker of hope remained within me. Alas, that final glimmer was extinguished by her own hands. I did not return to the hotel. Instead, I collected my passport from the detective agency and purchased a ticket back home. Let the two of them continue their tragic charade for now. The detective informed me that they had located my biological daughter. Years ago, my husband had swapped my daughter with Lu Yao's child and sent her to a rural couple who were unable to conceive. Remarkably, the couple had a daughter the following year, but unable to afford to keep her, they passed her on until a childless couple adopted her. Both parents were educators. Raising her well, she reportedly excelled academically, aspiring to attend a military academy like the National Defense University. After hearing the detective's findings, I temporarily abandoned the idea of reclaiming my child. I was determined to ensure that Yao Jun faced consequences, but forcibly reclaiming my daughter would jeopardize her future. It would be better for her to remain in her current family. If she were to discover that she had been abandoned by her biological father, it would be unbearable for her. For her sake, I resolved to refrain from disturbing her life. After my daughter pushed me off the cliff in Thailand, she descended to the police station to report the incident. Following a dramatic performance between my husband and daughter, the police dispatched search and rescue personnel to comb the bottom of the cliff, but found nothing, speculating that I may have been swept away by the currents and assuring that they would continue to monitor the situation. 2 days later, I called the Thai police to inform them that I had been rescued after falling from the cliff and had since returned home, thanking them for their efforts. They requested that I return for a formal statement, to which I replied that I had already given my account at a local police station in my country. Upon my return, I reported the incident and provided the police with video evidence from the detective agency showing my daughter pushing me off the cliff, along with a recording of her words prior to the act. Upon learning that I had survived and returned alone, my daughter and husband were filled with shock and dread, calling to inquire about my well-being. I instructed them to return home first, promising to discuss matters later. Upon landing, they were taken into custody, handcuffed, and summoned to the police station for questioning. Being only 16, my daughter lacked the fortitude to withstand the pressure, and upon sitting in the chair with handcuffs, she quickly confessed everything upon seeing the evidence in the officer's hands. Yao Jun appeared torn between his affection for Lu Yao and his cruelty towards me. He accepted full responsibility for the murder charge, claiming that Lu Yao had no involvement and that he had incited our daughter to act against me. Motivated by greed for my assets, I filed a lawsuit against him, seeking the recovery of the funds he had squandered on Lu Yao, as they were part of our marital property. Lu Yao approached me, inquiring how I had come to suspect them and uncover the truth. I responded with a cold smile, suggesting that she might find it hard to believe, but the heavens, displeased with the sordid deeds of her and her partner, had bestowed upon me a peculiar ability to discern the hearts of others. Naturally, she scoffed at my claim. With a pitiful smile, she retorted that I need not pursue my daughter, who had been raised as my own. After all, she had called me mom for so many years. Could I not absolve her of responsibility? I scoffed in response, asking if she had ever considered whether my daughter viewed me as her mother. Had she thought of the consequences when she pushed me from the cliff? Had I not been prepared, I would have been lost to the ether long ago. Lu Yao then asked what it would take for me to provide a letter of understanding for Yao Yuqi. I replied, only your death would suffice. She gritted her teeth and nodded, agreeing, very well, when I die, I hope you will honor your promise. On the fateful day when Yao Jun was sentenced to death by the prosecutorial office, Lu Yao tragically took her own life. When discovered, she had already succumbed to her actions. She committed suicide by slitting her wrists in her own home, with but a trickle of blood staining the floor. In her final moments, she sent me a message, urging me to uphold my promise. I had never anticipated her choice to end her life, yet, despite my profound reluctance, I ultimately provided a letter of forgiveness for Yao Yuqi. As she was still under 18, coupled with my letter of understanding, she was sentenced to a mere 6 years. I visited Yao Yuqi in prison and inquired, I have cared for you for 16 years, even if I am not your biological mother. Do you not harbor any feelings for me? With a pallid expression, Yao Yuqi sighed and replied, Father has said it best, you are not my true mother. And the blood that courses through our veins is not the same. How can feelings compare to the bonds of blood? As I prepared to depart, she uttered an apology, claiming that she had been momentarily entranced. I did not turn back, having lost the desire to discern whether her words were sincere or feigned. The story concludes here. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing our next tale.